I follow a podcast called The Science of Sport. I listen to them because they talk about different topics in the sport and dive into the science a lot. The hosts are two South Africans, one of which has a degree in exercise physiology, and he sometimes gets called as an expert when governing bodies are trying to decide on best practices. A few years ago, he was involved in a case where a female with DSD, which stands for Difference in Sexual Development, named Caster Semenya, was trying to fight for her right to stay in the female category. Because she's also South African, she was in the media a lot over there, but I think I first heard her name in this podcast and then later saw some other articles about her. She was very dominant in the women's 800-meter event, but the IAAF wanted to ban her from the female category because she had naturally high levels of testosterone. Well, if you've ever heard anything about this case, you likely didn't get the whole story. But luckily, Caster Semenya wrote a memoir. Hi, and welcome to the Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review books written for runners, about runners, and by runners to help you decide if you would like to read the book for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running, or maybe inspire you to try something new. My name is Liz, and with my co-host Alan, we're going to talk to you about the book written by Olympian and multiple gold medal winner in the 800-meter, Caster Semenya. The book is called The Race to Be Myself.
The Race to Be Myself is a 4-part memoir where Caster talks about, 1, the beginning, how she grew up and how she liked to hang out with the boys and play sports and what happened in puberty. 2, the rise, how she got into running and eventually decided to be more serious about training. She also talks about getting more serious about school because she wanted to run for a university where she could have access to coaches and other resources that would help her to be a better runner. 3, the awakening, her struggles during the years of high-level running and all the tests and treatments she ended up doing, and in some cases not doing, in order to be able to continue running. And 4, the redemption, the ban from competing in the female category for events from 400 meters to 1 mile and what she did next. So let's tell you a bit about Caster Semenya. Caster's full name is actually Mokgadi Caster Semenya. OIB. OIB is like a civil medal, a civil honorary medal given by the South African government. She was born on 7th of January 1991 and is a South African middle distance runner and winner of 2 Olympic gold medals and 3 world championships in the women's 800 meters. She first won gold at the World Championships in 2009. That's probably the Youth World Championships in Berlin, which we'll talk about later. And went on to win at the 2016 Olympics and the 2017 World Championships, where she also won a bronze medal in the 1500 meters. After the doping disqualification of Mariya Savinova, she was also awarded gold medals for the 2011 World Championship and the 2012 Olympics in London.
Unfortunately, we don't have Caster with us today.
So let's go through our reading of the book and make some comments.
Yeah, so how about before we start with the book, maybe we can talk about what we actually knew about Caster before reading the book.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I gather from your intro, your little story and stuff, you didn't know that much.
I didn't know that much, no.
But I guess I'm older than you, so I was sort of watching maybe the international athletics a bit more closely at that time than you were.
Yeah, I probably
I
wasn't.
always knew Caster Semenya as somebody who was extremely dominant. I think she was going through the phase in her career where she sort of dominated. So I saw her on TV. She would win Diamond Leagues.
There's the problem. It's because I don't have TV. Like that's the reason why.
Not even back in the day. I mean, I don't have TV now, but back in the day.
No. I mean, I haven't had TV since I left my parents' place, and that was in 1990.
Oh, okay.
Well, 7 or 8.
For people who don't have TV, it's like a box thing with a screen in the front of it, and you can get pictures from around the world that appear on there. It's sort of like a really hopeless, useless internet type thing where you can only get certain stuff. So that's TV.
Mm,
Hopefully
yeah.
we'll get the millennials listening now. They go, oh, TV, there's
Oh no, I mean,
an ancient thing that nobody knows about.
no, it's just
Anyway,
because TV didn't used to be. So now we have a TV, but we still don't have like cable, which is what you used to have in order for TV to actually be useful. Because
uh,
if you had a TV and you didn't have cable, like basically it was a black box that would sit in your living room and take up
yeah,
space.
with rabbit
So
ears on the top. Yeah.
exactly. And yeah, eventually rabbit ears didn't work
Look,
anymore and you could only get three
I'm
channels.
trying to explain about
Okay.
Caster Semenya.
Oh, okay, sorry. Let's get back to Castor then.
Okay. Um, so I guess I sort of saw her rise to fame because she was on all the big in all the big races, and she was dominant at the time, so she was winning. And I guess I knew her as a dominant potential future world record holder in the 800 meters, who was dominating the field and who, looked quite masculine in her. She looked quite yeah, masculine, and she didn't look very feminine. Um, and she was attracting some attention because of that. I didn't really know very much about her background and whether there was, something going on with respect to you being having to take testosterone suppressants and all that. I didn't really know all of
Hmm.
that stuff, but we'll get on to that because you need to tell us what you knew about her, and then
Yeah.
we'll talk about maybe what we learned while we were reading.
I mean, I heard about her because of this podcast. And so I guess I found out about her when she was in the middle of, battling with the IAAF, but she was still able to run in the female category, so she was still like winning 800s. Maybe like around the 2016, 2017, or it might have been later, because I do remember her eventually, making a comeback to track, but in a different distance, but I guess we'll get on to that. So yeah, I guess I found out about her when she was sort of at the end of her dominant 800-meter career. But she, once I heard about her on the podcast, I guess then I was seeing articles elsewhere because I think Canadian Running wrote about her as well, or about her story. I didn't know a lot, but I felt like I knew quite a bit about her battle to stay in women's sports because of this podcast, because they really went into it. They talked about what a DSD was and all of those kinds of things. And I actually had no idea that there were women like this before before hearing about
I guess
Castor.
that's one of the things that you learned while reading the book.
Yep. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think probably the sort of underlying sort of background story behind Castor was always suspicion from athletes that she was somehow cheating,
Hmm.
that she was taking testosterone, and that gave her the appearance that she had, and stuff like that. Which, what we learned is absolutely not the case. She's just who she is.
Hmm.
Probably the first thing I learned while reading the book was that she has external genitalia that say that she's a girl and that she's always viewed herself as a girl,
Yeah.
and that she'd never taken any performance enhancing substances, and that she grew up as a girl and
Hmm.
viewed herself as a girl that was just strong in appearance, somewhat masculine in build, and like to do boy type things, like to
Yeah.
mix it with the boys and had strength, and that
Yeah.
was kind of it.
Which brings us to the beginning. That the beginning of the book is all about sort of her upbringing. I mean, she was a girl. Her parents, everybody saw her as a girl. She just liked boy things, and I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of girls can relate with that. They're, back in the day, I don't know. I guess now women can identify as men and all these kinds of things. But when I was growing up, it was just like, well, you were just called kind of a tomboy if you liked sports and you were a girl. And that was it. You were a
Yeah.
girl and you liked sports and you hated dresses, and that was pretty much it. And that was kind of Castor, which I sort of identify with a little bit. Like she talks about like really not liking dresses, and yeah, I mean that was me when I was a kid. And I'm definitely a girl, so she talks about growing up and just she had a lot of boyfriends and she used to go hunting. She really liked that because it was basically just running around outside all day in the bush somewhere.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that came across as well was her character. Um,
Yeah.
she would never be bullied or pushed around or intimidated. I think if any of that was going down, she was stepping forward, not backwards.
Yeah,
Um,
actually, that's one of the things I really admired from her. I just find that, it seems like she just grew up having all this self-confidence. And I'm like,
yeah,
wow, like where can I get me some of that? You
it's
know?
true. It's true.
Yeah.
Amazingly strong. And in fact,
Hmm.
that character is probably the one thing that enabled her to survive the whole athletics thing that she went through at the end.
Yeah.
So from a book point of view, the beginning, it just kind of shows her building the character that is the Caster Semenya that she needs to have to get through
To get through all the things that
all
she's
the
eventually going to
yeah, I was
go
just going to
through.
say all the
Yeah.
shit she has to go through, basically.
Yeah. So, and actually when she grew up, like so she didn't really get into running until later. She really liked soccer though, and apparently she was really good. She would play
Yeah,
soccer
that
with the
was another
boys in
thing that
village.
endeared me to her because I'm a
Yeah,
big soccer fan.
I figured it would. Yeah, she would play soccer and she'd play soccer with the boys and
So you like her because she's a tomboy, and I like her because she's a
because
soccer player.
yeah, basically. I also like her because she's got a lot of self-confidence and like I lacked like lots of that growing up.
So
So
you admire that
um
in people.
I really admire that. I'm like, how do you just born with that? Like what is it? Like
Mm.
how do you get some of that? Um she just
I,
seemed to have it. I don't know.
I
Like
think part of that was sort of wrapped around she was by family.
maybe.
So she was
Yeah.
like super supported. She was never questioned by her family. She was sort of well loved, I think.
Yeah, and she was different, but her family never really, said anything about her being different. They just kind of accepted her the way she was. That was just the way she was. And yeah, and from a young age, she seemed to want to be, like her sisters. So she had sisters, and her sisters would, eventually take on sort of the house chores, but she wanted to be like the household provider. So sort of like the male, like follow
Role.
the male
Yeah.
role in the family, which is kind of interesting. Um, she eventually did that because she started making money and she would send it home. But yeah, it's interesting that she, even though she grew up with sisters and she was a girl, it was not, she just didn't follow that same path.
Yeah, and I guess in the second part, The Rise, it became clear that she was attracted to other girls as well, and
Hmm.
that she noticed certain other girls were attracted to her, and that's where she had her first relationship, where she bumped into during her school athletics meet, a girl called Violet Razaboya, who in fact she's now married to,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
I think they have two children, two IVF children.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Which is
But
is pretty
it was kind of
amazing.
interesting because originally she was in she tells the story that she was in the changing rooms of the athletics, and this girl Violet said, "What are you doing here? This is not the boys' changing room. Get out, get out." So she mistook her for a boy to begin with.
That was pretty funny. Actually, and Castor mentions how she would kind of just like walk around naked in the changing room, like as proof she was a girl.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
she figured they wanted to check her out to make sure she was a girl, so she'd
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah. She would just let everybody look at her in the shower and stuff. Yeah. And maybe we skipped over the whole puberty part because that was interesting, is, she eventually got to the age of puberty, but she didn't get the same changes that her sisters got. She didn't end up,
Yeah.
and she didn't end up getting her period, and she
Yeah.
didn't end up developing breasts. Like, she kind of was flat chested, more like a boy.
Yeah,
Um,
and they just shrugged it off. That was the first sign that
yeah.
she wasn't physically developing the same as everyone else.
hmm which is interesting. Like her family just kind of shrugged it off, and I think she just kind of shrugged it off, like she didn't think anything of it, because on
Mm,
top of it, she saw her sisters like once a month they would be like sort of sick in quotation marks. So
yeah.
so she's sort of like, oh, that doesn't seem like a lot of fun, so it's okay that I don't have um that whole period and thing. But it was interesting how it was sort of glazed over. Um, I guess it made sense to her all later. She found out she had the high testosterone and all that kind of stuff.
But she only found all of that out once she started doing athletics and people started to
Yep.
question her performances.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she was
So
she was an adult by that time.
I know, which is interesting and a bit sad for her, because I think like the way that it happened wasn't right. But let's first start with how she got into running, because I think it was a little bit of an accident. Like I think a lot of runners, a lot of runners get into running by accident.
Well, I think she was at a school. When she was at school, the school actually started an athletics program. It was only because the school started an athletics program that she got into athletics
hmm
seriously in the first place. If it hadn't have started the program, she might never have gotten into it.
Yep. Yep. Which goes to show you that sometimes, you gotta give people opportunities to see what they're capable of. And eventually, I think they actually had to close the athletics program because they ended up not having enough funding or resources
Yeah,
in late in the I think it was they opened it and the next year they closed it or something like that.
yeah, but by that time, Castor was good enough that they said, "Oh, you need to keep going. We'll send you to the neighboring schools program."
hmm Yeah, so she ended up competing, and then she would just compete with running barefoot, and she would be like winning, and eventually she got her first pair of spikes. I think they were just given to her,
Yeah, and they became her good luck shoes.
her good luck shoes. Yeah, she would wear them for races, which I remember that when I was a kid and I got my first spikes, like that was a magical moment. I can relate to her
You
lucky
you thought you
spikes
were a
thing.
real runner,
I thought I was a real runner at that point. I'm like, well, I
but
have
I've
spikes, so
arrived. I've
yeah,
arrived.
yeah, yeah.
I remember getting my first spikes. Was about
Except it was like last
was about
year.
4 months ago. Oh,
It took us a
I,
long time to convince you about your
and
first spikes, Alan.
and I remember getting them. It was a magical moment.
It was,
I
wasn't
was
it?
looking at them thinking, what the hell am I doing with these?
Yeah. So when she was running, she wasn't living at home anymore. She ended up going to school in another village and then staying at, I think, was it her aunt or her
Her
grandmother's
grandma, her
place?
grandma's place. I don't know if it's a real grandma or whether it's in
Like a
inverted
friend.
commas, grandma.
Yeah. And her grandmother had two boys, I think, that lived, but
Yeah.
she needed a girl to do like house chores and things, because she needed help
Yeah.
around the house. And
Yeah.
so
Castor came from a family with loads of children. So,
yeah, so her parents kind of like gave her to her grandmother to help. And so she took on all this responsibility. So I felt like she had to grow up all of a sudden.
yeah,
She
she
went
sort
from
of
being
left
a
home. Yeah.
yeah, she went from being a carefree child to like, okay, well, now you're going to school and you need to help your grandmother, so you have to do all the chores, and she was running, so she was training, so she was training by herself mostly, which is quite something. So it just shows how much she really loved the sport. And eventually she was competing, but she had to pay her transportation. It was her grandmother that started giving her the money to go and compete, because somebody's somebody had gone to see her and told her like just how good Caster could be if she could compete. Um, and her family believed in her. And like this isn't like the middle class family that like is like, okay, fine, like whatever, we'll pay for this sport. This
Yeah.
is like they didn't really have the money to give.
It was sacrificing in order to really try to push her along in an area where they thought she could excel.
Yeah, yeah. And they kind of had to be convinced because, they were like, oh, what could she possibly do with this running thing? I think because it could lead her potentially to have a scholarship at a university and she could get a good education. So they saw it as an investment.
Yeah, towards her education
Yeah,
to some extent. And in fact she did that.
she did
She
that.
was she
Yep.
was able to get a scholarship.
And actually, she only started taking school seriously because of running, because she wanted this scholarship, not because she wanted a good education.
Yeah,
She basically wanted the good education to go to university so that she could get the resources to make her a better runner. So, like coaching, because she hadn't really had coaching. And, like to be able to compete internationally and just like within South Africa um, and have all the funds to do that and the resources like that would help her to be a good athlete. And so she actually wasn't taking school very seriously until that moment when she was told that if she gets into a school then she could have all the
have a running
access to all
career
of these.
basically.
Yeah, basically. And so then she said but then she was also told, well, you have to also be able to um
To
academically succeed.
graduate. Yeah.
Yeah. So it
So I
was
think that
actually
that was
double good.
she got in a scholarship to do sports science at
Yes.
Pretoria University, which is I think quite a prestigious university in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And then she got good at sort of at a national class in athletics,
She
and
did.
then eventually she got sort of into
Yeah.
international meetings, and that's kind of where the trouble started.
Started. Yeah. I guess it started with them discovering that she had high testosterone.
Yeah, I think originally the South African authorities,
Yeah.
people were questioning,
Her
is she
her
legitimate? Is she a
yeah.
legitimate female runner?
Yeah.
And so they wanted to kind of medically inspect her.
Mm-hmm. Which actually she describes in the book. They didn't really tell her what they were doing, which I think in a lot of places, like in Canada and the US, I mean, that would be a scandal in itself. To do any medical procedure on someone without explaining it and
Yeah,
having
come into this room.
informed
We need to take
consent.
some blood, and you know,
Yeah.
we need to physically examine you.
It's
You
more the
know,
physical examination because it was like, it
well,
was a
particularly
it was a
particularly when she went
gender.
when she went to Berlin to the world to her first. She's an 18-year-old girl. She's qualified to go to Berlin to be in her first international competition,
Mm-hmm.
2009, to the Youth World Championships. And then
Yep.
somebody just says, go to a room, and some German medical
Doctor.
people
Yeah.
start,
That don't speak English,
yeah,
first of all. Yeah.
well, they first of all they stick needles in you, and then they come along and want to probe you in places that you've never been probed.
Mm-hmm.
Reading it was horrendous because you're reading it. It's 2009 when they did it, I guess, but
Yeah.
you're reading it 20, almost 20 years later, um, with those kind of eyes, and you'd say, well, that's a violation of personal rights. They haven't explained to her what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
She never knew
Yeah.
this was going to happen. She's on her own.
They just told her that she needs to do this in order to run, and she was like, well, I want to run. So she didn't really know why they were doing it. She didn't even, I guess to a certain extent, she didn't even know like if other athletes had to do it or not. So, she doesn't really go into that in the book, but originally the doctor wanted to do an ultrasound in like through her vagina,
Yeah,
but
internally.
but she was a virgin at the time and she was just like, no. And
Yeah.
then so they ended up like doing it another way. But I mean
Like
that's yeah.
rectally.
Yeah,
Or,
but the whole time she kind of didn't really understand why they were doing this, and it wasn't really explained to her, which like that's terrible. Then after that, there was a whole thing about afterwards. So they started with the treatments. So they wanted her to have some treatments done because her testosterone was too high. And so the options were medication to decrease her testosterone or a surgery,
yeah.
which would remove her gonads, I think, or something like that. Yeah.
Eventually, there's a categorization of her gender as intersex or
Yeah.
DSD, difference in sexual development. This comes much later when there's better scientific evaluations of these things, but they said she had some undeveloped testes, which basically were generating some testosterone and that they had to be removed if
Hmm.
she wanted to continue to compete as a girl. And she said, "No, I am who I am. I'm a girl. I've been growing up as a girl, and I'm not doing that."
And this was before she even knew that there were other cases because she explains that later in the book. But
Yeah,
for her, it was just like her self-confidence that was, no, like I'm not going to remove a part of me because that's who I am. And that was like kind of her reasoning in her head. It wasn't even later she found out what a good decision she had made because we actually learned that there are other cases of females like that from other countries that, those women weren't as well supported. And they did end up doing the surgery and it would end their athletic career basically because
yeah,
they would
they
end up with a bunch of problems.
have all kinds of problems
Yeah.
because I guess they're fully equilibrated the way they are from birth.
Yeah. And yeah, so Castor just made that decision because she says like, well, no, you're not going to remove a part of me. This is who I am. Um, which I think that probably saved her, just having that outright
Yeah,
confidence in who she is and
yeah,
that like who she is good. Not that the medication was easy, because that was also sounded like a pretty awful experience.
yeah. She has to take estrogens
Yeah, I
to
think
reduce her
testosterone.
testosterone down to below the limit at the time was they said 10 nanomoles per liter
Yeah, which later they changed to even lower.
to 5, and then currently it's 2.5, I think.
So she's taking these pills that she's told by the doctor right from the start, like you can't take this more than 4 or 5 years. And she ended up actually being, I don't know, not sick so much, well, a little bit, but just she was found herself emotional, which is something that she never
Yeah,
was before. She
she
would
started to get depressed.
started to get depressed, which that was never an issue for her before. She would just not feel well sometimes. She would she gained weight because of the medication. So she still like persisted with the training. She wanted to get back to the level that she was at, but she had dropped. Like she was running pretty consistently under 2 minutes before the medication. And then after the medication, she was, more like a 205,
Yeah, she wasn't world class anymore.
207. Yeah. 800-meter runner. That's crazy, eh? 205 is not world class.
Yeah,
Like, it's like,
bonkers.
oh my God, that's so fast. Um,
We were running
yeah.
some 3-minute intervals last night
Yep,
in our
yep, for
training
our
prep. We were
800.
running 3-minute 800s and finding it like, oh God, this is
God,
really
this is
tough.
so hard.
I think
Yeah.
one of the things that occurs around this time is the kind of the attitude of the IAAF. IAAF, we've said it several times, but I think it stands for International Amateur Athletics Federation. Is that right
Um,
acronym description?
it
It's
is
the
an
world.
acronym.
It's sort of the World Athletics Body at the time, what they were called.
Hmm.
Um, their attitude is just around. I guess it's around their events, and their attitude was this is kind of a problem. We don't have rules to deal with this. Cast as a girl, basically, and we don't have any rules. So they're kind of making it up on the fly. And their approach to begin with was to put pressure on the national authorities, so the South African athletics people,
Mm-hmm.
to get Castor to withdraw from
Yeah.
international events, kind of make it all go away, just push it under the rug. I
Yeah.
think I think we see Castor as an innocent girl being just manipulated by
And
these huge,
bullied.
yeah, these huge
Yeah.
organizations. And of course, you touched on the exact word there, bullied, because what we've seen in her upbringing is she does not tolerate bullies and she will not be bullied and she will not stand for bullies. And
Mm-hmm.
here now we've got these huge organizations who are deciding what's going to happen to her and are going to push her around. And really, they've picked the wrong person at this
Yeah.
point. And that's kind of the undercurrent of the book to some extent.
Yeah.
The background of the book all the way through. We see her career developing and etc. But there's this underlying aspect of authorities as bullies and
Yeah.
and Castor as a person who just doesn't tolerate that in her character.
And you know what? She was somewhat of a hero to her, like to the people in South Africa. Like she
Hmm.
was, she was performing really well, and she was kind of a hero. So uh people kind of came out of the woodwork to try and help her. Like eventually she had some legal experts that approached her to help defend her
Yeah.
in some of the cases that she had to, she had to try and have the IAAF reverse their decisions about certain things. So she had help, and I think they helped her for free. Like they just took on her case, which
I think that maybe they got paid by the South African government to begin
oh
with.
maybe
The South African government was supporting her case, and then they
yeah.
gave some funding for her to get legal help.
Yeah. And she talks about why she took it so far, and one of the reasons is because she recognized that she was lucky to have all this support, because she said some of the other women that she brings up that were from some other countries, they didn't have the same support that she had. So they did end up, ending their careers by having this surgery. And you never heard of them again afterwards. Um, and part of that was just because they weren't, and they were like not supported by their athletic organization. And also it became a little bit of a embarrassment for the families if they were sort of not seen as being women or not women enough, or
Hmm.
whatever
Yeah.
whatever their
So
opinion was. So
they were caught in that situation, which I guess
yeah,
Castor never had.
she never had
Um,
that. So
interestingly, in the sort of political pressure play, um, we see that a young Caster Semenya finds out about the results of her high testosterone and the sort of diagnosis of her gender as intersex or DSD, difference in sexual development. She finds out about it through press releases. So
yeah.
the whole thing's leaked to the press, and
Mm-hmm.
as a sort of 19-year-old kid who's been just a girl with some differences as far as she's concerned, kind of
Mm-hmm.
finds out about this from the media, basically. And then she's got media all over her trying to find out whether the stories are true and is she really a girl and all of that stuff. So an immense amount of manipulation and pressure coming
Yeah.
from the
And even
outside.
her family, her poor family, like her family back in this little village, they ended up having visits from all kinds of press and all kinds of people, basically sort of like asking if Castor is really a girl. And like her poor mother seemed kind of traumatized because
Mm.
she would show photos of like little Castor, in a little dress when she was a baby and all of that, and she's like, like she didn't understand. She didn't, because
Yeah.
again, like nobody's explaining anything to anyone.
Hmm.
And especially not to the people concerned, which is just terrible. So yeah, so her poor family was in a village and they were like swarms of people from the press and journalists and all kinds of people, and they just kept asking the same questions, and the poor family was just kind of like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't get it. Like, she's a girl, she's always been a girl. I mean, I changed her diaper, so she's a girl. So it was, it felt like a bit unfair. And I think Castor also, like, poor Castor probably felt, a bit powerless and a bit responsible for her family going through all of that.
And what I didn't realize was that she ended up competing while taking sort of testosterone suppressing drugs for years and years and years,
Hmm.
just slogging through, working her way back.
And she did get back, which was pretty amazing because, initially it kind of wreaked havoc on her system. But she was eventually able to get back to world class and run sub 2 minutes for the 800. Um, so she got to her previous times and uh, and
and,
won some
and,
some
and
international
qualified for
races.
Olympics and those kind of
Yeah.
things.
You know what surprised me too was just how, we always see running as being such a friendly sport. Like,
Hmm.
we're on the starting line, we talk to everybody. Yes, okay, so when the gun goes, you're competing. But outside of that, like you can be friends with all of the people that are there. And mostly you see that. You see that in road races. And that's not the experience she had. She was actually like, it didn't seem like any of the other competitors really liked her or liked that she was there.
It was almost like they were all assuming that she was cheating.
Yeah, some of them were nice to her face, but then like when the media asked them, they would be all,
Yeah, sort of suggesting things without coming out right and saying them, well, I'm not sure it's a level playing field or
yeah,
all
things
this
like
stuff.
that. Yeah. Which I'm kind of sad for her because,
Yeah, she
that
was
was
pretty alone.
yeah, she was alone. And that was one of the things that sort of I liked about the sport when I first joined track and
Hmm.
field in my teens. That was one of the things that I enjoyed was that, yeah, it's an individual sport, but if you're on a team, usually like you feel like you have a bunch of friends. Um, Even when, you're not friends once the gun goes, but you're friends again after when you cross the finish line. And she didn't have any of that, it seemed like, at least not on the international stage. I think like maybe in her country when she was growing up and competing and training, although she trained a lot on her own. But then when she went to the international stage, it just didn't seem like she had there wasn't much friendliness towards her. It's
No, there
sad.
wasn't. And there were also some people who were certainly not fellow runners, but there are other authorities or bodies that would support her while she was had a gold medal around her neck or was winning something and was there was lots of positive publicity. But then when there was questions from the IAAF and she wasn't winning races, they would kind of take the other side and disappear.
Mm-hmm.
So they were sort of fair weather type friends,
Yeah.
certain authorities.
Yeah. Actually, you know what was surprising was her sponsorship with Nike.
Yeah, that's
You
exactly
know,
what I was going to say.
you
Yeah.
know what? We've been like, we've covered
We've been
other
critics of
books.
Nike.
Yeah, we have been
Yeah.
because we covered, like Kara Goucher's book, and Nike was really unfair to her and really, took advantage of her. But Castor seems like
They never deserted her all
they
the way
never, yeah,
through. They supported her.
yeah,
And she has only has positive things to say about Nike and the sponsorship that she had through Nike.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah, I guess that's a win for Nike.
Yeah,
Um,
fair due. We
Mm-hmm.
we we tell it when it's bad. We should tell it when it's good.
Yeah, we're just biasing our podcast. But yeah, she had a great experience. They never once like stopped paying her and through everything that she went through, they supported her and her career and her growth. I mean, that's it's amazing.
So somewhere around quite a few years later, there was a challenge to the doping controls. I think that there was an Indian athlete called Juti Chand championed a challenge of the rules of the testosterone limits, I think, and the controls around that. And so something like 6 years after she'd been taking these 6 or 7 years after she's been taking these drugs all the time, there was a challenge and the need to take the drugs to suppress her testosterone was removed for a little while. And Castor was able to, I think, have a more free
Existence. Yeah.
chance to train and develop. Subsequently, the IAAF did a new study in 2017. They said it was a new study. They used it as justification for coming back and reinstating their rules. So the
Hmm.
whole thing ended up in years and years of court battles, getting more and more senior courts of appeal, and the Swiss Supreme Court of Human Rights. Um, so this escalates over the years into a human rights issue rather than a just defining gender in sports, which it is. It's based on.
Hmm.
I never understood why when the IAAF came out in 2017 and said, we've got new data, so we're reimposing the rules and we're going to reimpose them at, at 5 nanomoles versus 10
And
previously, so more strict. And they're only going to be for the 400 meters, 800 meters, and 1500 meters. I never really understood why they were only for those distances. Because
yeah.
because what they said was, we're doing it to protect, and everything has to be couched in acceptable political terms. So we're doing it to protect the female category.
Yeah.
You can understand if you're a female runner who has a chance to be elite in her sport, you don't want people rigging the system to pretend they're female runners. So I don't know, transgender runners who have masculine attributes and masculinity and were raised as males. Um,
Hmm.
so there's that issue. So you cannot understand the aspect of trying to protect the female sport. But if you're protecting the female sport, why do you only try to protect it for 400 meters, 800 meters, and 1500 meters?
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Caster Semenya just happens to be who's dominant in the 800
In the
meters,
800. I
just
know.
happens to be an 800-meter runner.
She was a really good mile and 1500
So,
also.
so
So,
yeah, but
yeah.
why have you chosen those? I'm sure there's a rationale for it, but it's not explained.
No.
If you say, well, those are power events and testosterone is more relevant to a power event,
Yeah. But then you'll be like, but what about
what about
100 and
200
200?
meters? Yeah.
Yeah,
But the 100 meters is an extreme power event.
exactly.
So I kind of don't understand it. And if it's your intention to protect the female category, well, the female category extends beyond 400, 800, and 1500. So why have you
Yeah, it
picked
does.
those?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when
Strange.
they put in that rule and because I heard about it on this other podcast that I was listening to. And then I remember when Castor went and decided to run the 5,000. And I was kind of like rooting for her. Like way to, be
She
resilient and
wants to run. She's going to try to run
she's gonna
whatever.
try and run.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of disappointed that it didn't end up like going that well for her. Like she was good in the 5,000, but I think she wasn't world class.
Yeah.
And then I didn't hear about her anymore, but it's because she kind of stopped running after that.
Yeah, I mean, she did win some stuff at 1500 meters, but she was extremely dominant. I mean, at the 800.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Castor says in her book that she feels that she was targeted by the governing bodies.
Hmm.
And the fact that they would only put the controls straight in over 400, 800, and 1500 kind of suggest that, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. It really does seem like they're just trying to prevent her from competing.
Mm.
Um, instead of
Because
being
because
like
she won't go
really,
away. She's that kind of character.
yeah.
She's in the public eye. She's a winner, so she's dominant. So she appears at the front. It's
Mhm.
almost like her they target her because she's winning and she's attracting the attention.
Yeah, yeah.
She doesn't
And
have many nice things to say about Sebastian Coe,
no, she
um,
doesn't, which
who's head of the IAAF
at the time, yeah.
during the period.
In a way, like I kind of understand, Castor was born the way she was born, and maybe it was an advantage, maybe it wasn't. Like I guess we don't really know because, we don't know if all women that are born with a DSD are they all good in sport? Like we don't really know that. Um like
Mm.
I guess I kind of understand that you want to protect the female category, but I kind of get why Castor fought it for so long because she was born that way. There's nothing she can do about it. And, you know, now she's not in any category, which, like, I don't know,
Yeah, she's
isn't
effectively
quite fair?
since the rules came in really hard in 2019 when because there was some challenges, so she was able to compete for a while. But in
Hmm.
2019, the Swiss Supreme Court reimposed the rules, and
Yeah,
they were just too hard for her to
to
reach the
attain.
low testosterone levels.
Yeah.
So she hasn't been able to compete at all since 2019.
And one of the last things that she did was she ran a 154 in the 800 out to Diamond League event, and it was a record at the time
Yeah,
for that meet. Yeah.
she said that she was ready to run a world record before
Yeah.
before the rules were reimposed, and it looks like from her numbers that she probably was.
So yeah, I guess like in reading the book, I was a bit sad for her. I mean, I guess I kind of understand the female category rule. Um, but at the same time, there are people born with other genetic differences that make them good at certain sports. We don't ban them. Like Michael Phelps is like he's got an abnormally long torso and that makes him a good swimmer, apparently.
I guess what you
But we
have to
don't.
say is at the end of the day, athletes and people in any sports at the very top level have genetic traits which favor them.
You kind of wonder
You don't
like,
go, I'm not sitting here going, oh, it's not fair. LeBron James can jump higher than I can, so
hmm
he's stopping me from developing, my career in basketball.
it's complicated, but I guess
It's where you draw the line, isn't it?
yeah,
So,
you got to draw it somewhere. I get it, but I was sad for Castor because it's just the whole way that everything happened and everything
yeah.
she had to go through to compete and she was so young. She's like growing up and barely an
Yes.
adult and they're like, making her do these medical tests that nobody really explains to her and um yeah, it's
She's treated badly. She never felt sorry for herself and she's
no.
continued to fight.
No,
Yeah.
but on the upside, some good things that happened to her. Well, one of them is she met her now wife Violet, who she's married
Yeah.
to and has kids with. And actually, towards the end of the book, she does talk about she wants to support her family and be there for her family. So I don't know if that's part of why she decided not to pursue the 5,000, but she does talk about that in the end.
And I think ultimately the case that was in front of the Court of Human Rights she seems to have won that case. Looking at the internet recently, she seems to have won that case, but it doesn't allow her to go and compete again because I think the regulations are that the international athletics events are basically a private company, so they can they
Impose any
can
rules if
still
they.
impose some specific rules. So
Okay.
they can still maintain their rules, even though on a human rights level, they don't necessarily have, like if it was in the public domain, they wouldn't be able to do that, for example.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess it is what it is. Book was pretty
I
eye-opening.
think if you were if you were a child in the Western world, you'd be diagnosed as being intersex or DSD. You'd probably be diagnosed or I don't know if diagnosis is identified. Diagnosed sounds like it's a disease, but it's not.
Yeah.
Um, Identified as that at a much earlier age. And you'd know what you were in for as you were developing and going into sport.
Yeah, or you would at least be identified in puberty because I think here, like your parents would bring you to
Yeah.
the doctor because like you don't have your period at 16, you know? So I think
That would be the latest. Before then, I think probably, there would be lots of indications that maybe your parents would take you to be evaluated.
yeah, yeah. But then I don't know. It kind of goes to show you that I mean, I don't know which is better. Like I guess it's good to know, but at the same time, Castor didn't know. I wonder how much that'll affect someone if they're sort of like diagnosed and now they're like put in this category. Um, then what does that do to your developing sense
Mental,
of
yeah,
of identity and I don't know.
and
I don't know which
character.
is better, right? Like
Yeah.
for in a way,
Yeah,
like for Castor,
she's had a brilliantly strong character that's enabled her to go through life because of the way she's brought up
she was
to
brought up,
be.
yeah,
I
and she
just am who
was
I am, and I enjoy being who I am.
hmm
Um,
yeah.
Rather than, oh, apparently I'm some sort of strange species gender
Hmm.
that's in the middle somewhere that there's no real category for, and I can't compete in sports with anybody.
Mm. Well, I think you can always compete with the men, but you know, do you want to if like, you do you want to share a locker room with someone that has the opposite genitalia from you? I'm not really sure. So,
Well, no, that's not on.
mm,
That's not on at all. Yeah. So
mm,
there's no easy answer, I think, at the end of the day.
no. Yeah.
But clearly, I think Castro had
Yeah, she
um,
kind of had a rough
a
go, I
tough
think.
treatment. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was a good read. Anyway, I liked hearing about her perspective because there were a lot of things that, you don't you don't know, like all those things that no one talks about it in the media that, she was tested and nobody told her what she's being tested for and what's her perception of the whole thing. For her, I think a lot of times she was just like, well, why wouldn't I compete with the women? It seemed like
Yeah.
for a lot of her, the beginning at least, it was like there was just this big question mark in her head, and she was like, well, I mean, I belong here. I don't understand what's wrong with you guys.
Yeah. I think one thing as well during the time, there was not so much social media. It was only in its
Yeah.
infancy. And her approach was, look, I am who I am. I'll just stay quiet and compete.
Hmm.
The view from the outside was, well, we don't hear anything about her other than she's just winning all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't really get a story out. So what you see is somebody who's just dominating, and you go, "Oh, is that really fair? Look, she's just dominating." When in fact, the whole background story is she's going through an incredible amount of training under the duress of having, drugs in her body that are making her feel bad
Mm-hmm.
all the time, and fighting her way through the all the mental situation and coming out on top. And
Yeah.
you'd almost if you knew all that story at the time, you'd see her win the races and you'd go, "You go, girl."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
stick it to them. If they're trying to keep you down, but they can't. Whereas I think at the time, because she was saying nothing and there was no, all you saw was her winning the race, and you go, "Oh,
Yeah.
I
Or
wonder
you
what the
saw
background
whatever
story
the
is about
media.
that. I wonder if she's really a man, or I want, which is nothing like the real story."
Yeah. No, exactly. I guess maybe that is a good segue to you telling us what you thought of the book.
Okay, so my thoughts on the book. Well, it's an amazing book about a person who's effectively caused a redefinition of what it means to be a woman in sport. I think, we'll look back on it in 50 years' time and say this is where it all began. Her treatment as a young innocent girl back in 2009 seemed to border on personal violation by the athletic authorities. Horrendous, and we've talked about that. She also appears to have been personally targeted by the athletic authorities because she was winning. My comment about, why do you target the 800 meters as a rule? Because
Hmm.
she happens to be dominant in there. Her character was incredibly strong to get through the challenges placed in front of her. I guess the new rules might or may not be appropriate moving forward, but the manner of their introduction was clearly victimizing towards her. And we saw some of that victimization. And I think her only crime was to just be who she is and to win races. The book is beautifully presented. So it has a wonderful picture of Castor on the front, looking typically Castor, but
Hmm.
quite thoughtful, not in racing gear, in casual gear. And there's some great color photos in the middle of her childhood and her growing up, as well as later on in adult life. And probably just at the end, because we don't have Castor on, what I would wish for her in the future is contentment and happiness and joy in her life going forward. She deserves she deserves every piece of that she can get from now.
Yeah.
Medals, medals are medals. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, me too. I hope she continues to run, even if it's just, as a way to keep fit or whatever.
Yeah.
And I hope she can like look back at the things she's achieved and that she can be proud of them. Even if, like she had a hard time, it seemed like her competitors didn't really befriend her like I think most people that are in the sport, I think there's a lot of camaraderie, but she didn't really seem to experience that. And
Hmm.
yeah, I hope that despite that she's she can kind of look back fondly on the memories of the things she achieved and where she came from, how she got there, because it's really a story of perseverance that she came a long way, from a rural village and all the things she had to do along with training in order to get to where she got. It's pretty amazing. I think this book is for anybody that was following Castor's journey while she was, trying to fight all the rules preventing her from racing in the female category. This is a like her perspective, all the background story that we didn't get at the time. I guess I've already mentioned I learned about this on another podcast called The Real Science of Sport. So they actually did a few episodes on the case, and I thought they did a pretty good job about discussing like the nuances in the whole story, and why it was why the IAAF was trying to ban her, and but why she's also in the right um to want to be able to compete in the female category. Like they did really do, I think, a pretty good job of discussing that, because it is kind of a complex issue. It's not just like, well, no, she belongs in the men's category. Well, no, it's not so clear. So yeah, I think that anybody that was following that should get I guess a more complete story out of this book. And I'm just sad about how everything ended up happening to Caster, because, the way she was treated and singled out, and maybe not supported the way she should have been, and not explained to, like, very very much. Like, there were a lot of years where she didn't really understand why she was being singled out and tested and all these things. So she just kind of accepted it because she was like, well, I want to run, so do whatever you have to do so that I can run. So yeah, a little sad for that, but uh really a really good read, actually. So it's a nice story of her whole life. It was well written in her voice. So
Yeah,
good
and I
read
think
overall.
if you want to see, character and perseverance of individuals in front of challenges and overcoming, I don't know, just having poise and humanity. It's a great story for just seeing those characters.
Yep. You want to do the outro so that people don't give us 1 star?
Okay, so thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. A big thank you to the publisher W.W. Norton and Company for providing a review copy of the book. If you'd like to leave us feedback about how we can improve the podcast or want to suggest a book that you'd like us to review for future episodes, please leave us a comment on social media. We are Running Book Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter or X, we are reviews_running. Please also follow us on social media to find out about new episodes when they are released, or you can just subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. If you've been listening to us for a while and wondering how you can help us out, here are a few ways. If you're enjoying the podcast, spread the word. Tell your friends about us, or share a link to your favorite episode with your buddy or running partner or anybody. If you'd be so kind, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcast if this is how you listen, or you can rate us on Spotify out of 5 stars. This is not the Liz outro, so you're not allowed to give us a 1-star rating. We're also on Buy Me a Coffee, where if you go to the platform Buy Me a Coffee and look under creators for Running Book Reviews, you can find all sorts of snippets and outtakes, extras, background information on there. And you don't have to buy us a coffee, but you can. There is an option to buy us a coffee if you want. That's all today from Running Book Reviews. Bye for now.
Bye.